So I want to make sure that I take this time to introduce you to Miss Latiese Riley, and I am super excited about you being here, Latiese. I admire your strength. I admire your boldness to tell your story today, and I know because you are here, someone else is going to be impacted, and they're going to be blessed by you being here. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So Latiese, tell me your story. I want you to just share your story openly and as freely as you would like to share it.
Okay, my story is um, one that most people will say, "Oh, that can never happen to me."
Mhm.
That I have a "I can never happen to me" story. That can never happen to me story. Um, I'm here right now to be a voice for Carrington, who was my daughter. She was 3 months old when she was murdered. It wasn't an accident. It was pure murder, and that the way that her father was able to just walk away as if nothing happened is beyond me. Um, the whole process has been emotional roller coaster from the very beginning to up till now. This happened September 19th, 2015, and we're in 2017, and still no justice have came about yet. And I'm not going to give up because I know that her story has to get heard. Throughout the year in 2016, there's been so many domestic violence stories, so many stories where the mother or the mother and the child has been killed, and it's been silent in the justice system. They kind of ignore it. And what is left for us to do? A lot of women and even men who are being abused are scared to say something about it. What is left for us to do?
Right. Now tell me about. Um, I want you to kind of start from where you were in this situation, and I know you were dating, this gentleman. And how long had you been? How long had you all been dating?
We dated for approximately 2 years.
Okay.
I met him when I just turned 18. This was in 2001.
Okay.
So I knew him for a while. Shortly after is when I met his family, and we became getting serious. We started getting serious with our relationship. It didn't last too much longer than that. I just thought that it was just something that we were on two different levels. I was 18, he was 23.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like an imbalance.
Right.
So, later on in life, we actually found each other again. After we would talk on the phone and everything, we started dating a little. It wasn't nothing serious. A little soon after, I became pregnant. At this time, it was like when I told him when I found out, and his whole demeanor, attitude, everything changed. It was like, well, you're going to get an abortion. I don't want nothing to do with you if you have this baby. Everything just changed. From that point on, it was like he hated me. So I was left. I went through the entire pregnancy by myself. The last week of my pregnancy is when he stepped up and said, "I'm sorry. This is what I want to do. I need to make it up to you. This is what we're going to do. We're gonna, if we can't be together, we're gonna co-parent." That was fine with me, but I couldn't see nothing else coming out of it. But I was being patient. I said, okay, well, this is what we're going to do, because I never in a million years would want to keep a child away from their father.
Right. Now, tell me, Latiese. I know that as you all were dating during this time, and I know you had this break and then you came back. Was there anything, that hinted any red flags, any yellow flags that went up and said, "This is not good for me"?
During the time that we weren't dating and we lost contact with each other, I learned that his mother passed away. Mm-hmm. So any odd behavior that I saw in him, I just thought, well, maybe, he's just still going through it. He was the youngest child out of 7 children. And I know that his mother was like his everything. So I just, I felt sorry for everything that he was going through. So any odd behavior, any temper tantrums, or anything that I saw, I would just say, okay, well, I know he's still just going through this with his mother, losing his mother. I don't know how that feels, but I can't even imagine what he's going through. So yes, I did see red flags, especially it was mainly the temper. Mm-hmm. Then it started being possessive over little things. By the time Carrington came along, it was this is my child. I'm taking her with me. This is my child. It was always mine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, at that time, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do?
Right. So he became very controlling.
Very, very, very controlling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So though, would you say that is definitely a sign? That's definitely a red flag.
Yes.
When someone becomes controlling, don't want you to leave the house without them, or wanting to keep the kids and things like that. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you can say, okay, yes, pay attention to this?
Yes, I would say that would be in that more advanced stages. When you see that, you're like, okay, how am I going to get out of this?
Right.
So at the beginning, it was more very humble, like how the way that it would go. Mm-hmm. It would start off very passive aggressive with, what's a good example? Well, he would say, well, no one, I really love you. No one is going to love you the way that I do. And then after the baby came, it was, well, you have 3 kids now. Who's going to take care of you? Who's going to love you? No, you would never find nobody like me. It was a extreme for my experience, because it was like, okay, I'm starting to see things, and I didn't think nothing of it to boom.
Right.
So, and it was a very scary position to be in.
I want to pause right here, because I do want to make sure that that I acknowledge some of the things that you're saying, because I don't know who's in our audience. And so I want you to make sure that you are always be aware of what's going on around you. And some of you have been to the Christmas parties, and you've been to the New Year's parties, and you're saying, I've seen that behavior. I've recognized that behavior. I've recognized the controlling. I've recognized, the how they talk down to her or to him and made them feel like nothing. And one of the things that you said is that he made you feel like no one else would want you. Made you feel like, well, nobody's going to want you because you have these children, or you this, you're that. And that is very much so the personality, the temperament of someone who is abusive. And so I want you to be aware of what's going on. Again, we got to open our eyes, because this is a very serious issue, but sometimes it's ignored because no one wants to really deal with it.
Exactly.
Do you feel like people who were around you who just kind of, they saw it, but they ignored it, or maybe they mentioned it to you and you ignored it? Tell me a little bit about that.
I do believe that, because we have that long history with one another. I felt like people did see it, whether it was my family or his family. Mm-hmm. But they didn't really say anything, because it was just like, he was a great manipulator. Mm-hmm. Anytime you're able to manipulate a situation to make it seem like you're always the good guy, you're always trying to do the good thing, and anyone who is against you is the bad person, that's what the people say. Whether it was my family who said, oh, you're just being too hard. Oh, that he is the father. Oh, you should just do this and do that. Why are you making it so hard for him? Because they didn't see what I saw.
Right.
And the same thing with his family. And it felt like everything was just on his side. And even then, I didn't have a voice, because my family and his family and everybody was just like, oh, she's just tripping,
Wow. That's real. That's real. I think, and we are sometimes so I don't even want to say naive, but sometimes we just ignore things because we don't want to deal with it. And sometimes it's generational because you've seen so many people in abusive situations and who've been treated bad. You just kind of dismiss it like, oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. But that is not the way it's supposed to be. That is not how love behaves. So we got to make sure that we are not just turning our nose up or turning our heads and saying, I don't want to deal with this because if I get in it or I don't want to get in it. That's another thing people say, oh, I don't want to get in it. That's your stuff. You know, you deal with that. But no, you are, when you ignore it, when you turn your head away from it, then you are putting someone's life at risk.
Absolutely. Yes.
You're putting someone's life at risk. Oh my goodness. Okay, so you're going now, so we're going somewhere with this because I want to make sure that people understand the backstory.
Yeah.
You know, this is not something that you just kind of woke up and this just happened.
Absolutely.
There were signs there.
Yeah.
There were flags there. There were people who saw things and they kind of ignored it and act like they didn't see it. Now you did something about it though. You said this is not normal.
Yes. It was the night of August 28th. Him and I he wanted to, the story was he wanted to pick up Carrington for the weekend. And I wasn't okay with that because she had a runny nose. To me, she just didn't feel well. So I said, no, you can't get her this weekend. So he decides to just come over and pick her up and get her anyway. So him and I exchanged words, which ultimately became violent. And him actually, this is the first time that now he's putting his hands on me and he's punching me like a grown man. He's punching me, and this is outside. Everyone sees. It's daylight. It's getting dark, but it's daylight. And no one never called the police. No one said anything because they did not want to get in it. So eventually, my goal at that time was, in my thinking, I'm saying to myself, okay, you're treating me like this. You're in a violent rage. It's no way in the world that you're going to have my daughter. I want my daughter. So I have bruises on my face. He's punching me like a punching bag. Scratches on my hands, my feet, everything. Once he pulled off, I was able to call the police. By the time they came, he was nowhere to be found. I gave them the description of the car and everything. I actually had to go to the hospital because they did not, because of the swelling that was in my face and me not able to move my mouth to talk properly. They thought that, well, something's wrong. You have a break somewhere in your face. So when I finally go to the hospital, I spent maybe the next 2 hours in the hospital being checked out in the ER. The police followed me there. He was the one who said, well, I'm filing this police report. I'm pressing charges.
Hold on. Okay. Wait a minute. Let me make sure, because I want to make sure I make sure we all get the story right.
Yeah.
So he physically put his hands on you.
Yes.
He physically abused you.
Yes.
And he went down to the police station and filed a report. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, he filed a report also, but the police who followed me to the hospital, the police filed a report on my behalf after seeing me. But yes, he wants to go file a report also, saying that I attacked him. He took pictures. It was a scratch on his arm that was already scabbed up. And he's saying that I abused him, I attacked him, I punched him. Everything that he did to me is what he portrayed that I done to him at this time. So now, because we're in two different counties, I'm living in Anne Arundel County, he's living in Baltimore County. He goes to Baltimore County Police to file these charges against me. And then so I get a citation in the mail saying that I'm having charges pressed against me. I have to go to court. So as soon as I get out the hospital, I go to the courthouse to make sure the charges were pressed. They were pressed. The next day, I go get the protective order. I go get the protective order, and it's for me and Carrington. The temporary protective order protected us. A week later, when we go to finalize the protective order, he is there, and he has his sister with him. And the judge looks at me and says, "Well, do you have any proof at all that he abused this 3-month-old daughter of his?" I said, "No, I don't have any proof." "Well, she's not going on. I just don't feel comfortable. She's not going on this protective order." Is exactly what she told me.
Okay, pause here, because I'm trying to gather all this in my mind and I'm not going to try to make sense of it. I just want to make sure that I understand what you're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the police took you down to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They filed the charges on your behalf.
Yes.
They took pictures.
Yes.
So when you went to court, I'm sure those pictures did surface.
Yes, they did.
So
Yeah.
for the protective order.
Yes.
And so the judge.
I'm sorry, not for the protective order.
Okay.
The judge did not see any pictures or anything.
Gotcha.
Protective order.
So they didn't know. Did they know about you pressing charges though because he had abused you?
Yes, they knew about that. They knew about it, and that was the only reason why I was protected. But because I didn't show any proof or didn't have any reason to protect Carrington, as they said, that she was not allowed to be on the protective order with me. So she was taken off of that protective order.
Wow. How did that make you feel as a mother?
I felt helpless. I felt like I was doing the right thing by going to the proper authorities and not taking stuff in my own hands and thinking that I was going to get justice this way. Literally, 11 days later is when he gets his first visit with Carrington, and she's dead that night.
His first visit.
His very first visit after this protective order was in place. I get a phone call, maybe 10:50 p.m. from the Northwest Hospital, which is very close to where he lives in Randallstown. And the nurse called me, and she sounded frantic over the phone. She said, "Are you Carrington's mother?" I said, "Yes." And I'm half asleep. So when you get a phone call and you're half asleep, you're shaking, you know.
Right.
So, and she's like, "Well, you need to get here right now." And I'm like, "Well, who are you? What am I, what's going on?"
Right.
And I said, "You said Carrington. What's wrong with Carrington?" "I can't tell you anything over the phone. You need to get here right now." "How long is it going to take you?" I said, "It's going to take me at least 30 minutes, 35 minutes because I live in the Fort Meade area." She said, "Fort Meade." I heard her talking to someone in the background. He said, "She lives around the corner." So now my brain is just like going 120 miles per hour. I'm trying to get myself together so I can drive and get to Northwest Hospital as fast as I can. By the time I get to Northwest Hospital, they were already expecting me. It was a security guard in the emergency room. A nurse was standing there, and she said, "Oh, that's the mother right there." My heart just stopped right there because I did not know what to expect. So when the nurse asked the security guard to escort me to where Carrington was. Now, by the time I walk into Carrington, I just hear beeping noise. I hear people talking. I don't know what to expect. I did not know that I was standing next to the triage room where several people were working on her when they were trying to manually have her heart beating. They was having her on life support. They had her wired up. All I seen was her lifeless body. I did not know that was my baby until the nurse, she said, now the nurse thinking the doctors told me what happened. The doctors thinking the nurse told me. So I'm still like, what's going on? The very first thing the doctor told me was, when your daughter came here, she did not have a pulse or a heartbeat. From that moment on, everything just fell. I don't know whether I fell hard to the ground or it just, I can't remember from that point. I remember him saying that they had to resuscitate her 3 times because she did not have a heartbeat. She did not have a pulse. And he said, when her father brought her in the car seat, she was strapped in, and he said, "Hey, something's wrong with my baby. Could you tell me what's going on?" I hear him laughing in the hallway with a police officer as if he's making jokes. No emotion at all did this man feel for this child, this 3-month-old defenseless child. They finally let me go into the room in the triage area where they were working on her. The nurse said, Johns Hopkins is on their way because we do not have the correct equipment to keep her here. So we're going to get her transferred to Johns Hopkins as soon as possible. So until Johns Hopkins got there, I was just there. I was holding her hand. Usually when I put my finger in her hand, she automatically just grips. It was no grip. I knew only the worst can happen from this point. Her body was totally lifeless. Even the color of her body has changed. I got more details from the doctor. When Johns Hopkins came, I couldn't ride with them, so I had to meet them there at the hospital. On my way out, the doctor said, well, when she came in, she was also very dehydrated. She hasn't eaten in a very long time. She's very dehydrated. This is summertime. It was still hot outside. It wasn't summer, it was September. It was still hot outside. So now I'm having these thoughts in my mind. No one he's not showing any emotion. His sister, who eventually came, is just like, is there anything I can do? I have thoughts that maybe she has something to do with it. I have no idea what's going on. To this very point right now, I have no idea what happened to Carrington. By the time we got to Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital, every doctor who came on duty, she had a team of 10 people. Each doctor who came in had another report for me. The first doctor said she suffered from cardiac arrest twice. The next doctor said, well, her brain is severed from her spinal cord. The next doctor explained to me that she had fractures all over her skull. After that, I kind of blanked out. They were still talking, but I couldn't, everything that they said, I felt. Lastly, the thing that just had me just like, I did not see or hear anything was the fact that the doctor came to me and said, we know whoever did this did it just recently because her eye sockets were separated from her brain because she's been shaking so hard. I spent a total of 5 days in the hospital next to my baby. The doctors, the team, everyone at Johns Hopkins was so great, and I'm forever grateful for their understanding that as a mother, I had to be there for her. They saw the father come in. They saw the father calling the hospital asking, is she dead yet? And then he's still trying to fight for his rights to see his daughter in the hospital. At this point, I know that I need to be the voice for Carrington. I carried her for 9 months, only for her to live for 3 months. 104 days, to be exact. She did not deserve anything that she had to go through.
Latiese, I cannot imagine the hurt, the pain, the frustration, the disappointment, the anguish. You know, I'm a mother. and I just can't imagine. I can't. Um, so now I wanna move to the fact that this has gone to court. Okay, so he is was charged for murder. And so tell me about that process.
So maybe a week or so after we left the hospital, the detectives, there were two detectives that were working on this case. They told me that he was charged. Originally, they arrested him on second-degree charges, second-degree murder, second-degree child abuse, all these second-degree charges. The detectives were able to get enough evidence to make it first-degree murder charges, first-degree murder, first-degree child abuse, first-degree child abuse with neglect resulting in death, and it was a fourth charge. It got to the point where somehow his lawyer convinced the judge to have a bail for him. He was let out on a $500,000 bail. Now he's still walking the streets. No justice at all. He was let out as if nothing happened. And it wasn't only until we went to court for the domestic violence case that he only served 4 months in a detention center.
So, just so I'm clear, so he went to court for second-degree murder.
Yes, he was indicted.
He was indicted for second-degree murder.
Mm-hmm.
He was released on a $500,000 bond.
Yes.
And did he do any jail time?
Not for that. He did not do any jail time at all.
So how does that happen? How does someone? I mean, how does someone who is convicted of second-degree murder?
He wasn't convicted. He was charged.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
And then it turned into first degree.
Okay. And he was charged of first-degree murder, or was he convicted of first degree?
No, he wasn't convicted of anything. They dropped all the charges together. Originally, he was charged with second degree, but they found so much evidence from wherever, I don't know whether it was his house, his car, wherever he was, on him, that the charges were able to be elevated to first degree murder. He was still let out on a $500,000 bail. He maybe spent 5 days in a detention center before he was let out.
And then, and so then he comes back to court for the domestic violence.
Yes.
And tell me what happened there.
For the domestic violence trial, he opted for a jury trial, which kind of gave him a little bit more time to get out and do whatever he wanted to do. By the time the trial came, before the trial came, he had a warrant. There was a warrant that Anne Arundel County put out for his arrest because of the domestic violence. It was set up so that him and his lawyer would come to the court, set up so that him process or whatever process they had to go through, and the warrant was issued to him at that time, which kept him in jail throughout the trial process. So now he's only in jail on a warrant at this point. So once we had the trial, all the evidence is shown, or the pictures of my face, my hands, everything that is bruised on me.
And what do you say to our audience in terms of people that they know are in relationships, people that they know are that they saying, okay, I see this, I know this is going on, I see the red flags because I've been informed today on the show, I know what the red flags look like. Can you tell me what can they do? What should they do?
Because a lot of times people don't want to step into situations that may be violent or cause them harm. Be a listening ear. They may say something between the lines that may save their life just by them saying, well, I really don't feel comfortable going home. Offer them to stay with you. Offer, another way for them to have comfort, especially if there's children involved.
Right.
If you don't have room for everyone, let me just take the kids and you just go somewhere else.
Mm.
It's right. I don't know how to explain it. It's a scary position to be in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People do not want to talk about it.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people are embarrassed when they're in an abusive relationship,
mm-hmm.
even
mm-hmm.
if it's verbal.
Right.
Most abusive relationships start off verbal.
Right.
Oh, he just said this. He didn't put his hands on me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, that's how he always is when he get mad.
Right.
But it's not an excuse.
Right. Right. Absolutely. I love the fact that, and I am so blessed and honored by the fact that you took time today to share your story. And I will say this, that Latiese's story is one of millions. And so when you start talking about the story, when you start allowing the truth to be made manifest about the story, then you're always going to have somebody out there who's saying, well, this is not the truth, or they have something to say that combats the truth. So I appreciate, again, your courage in doing this. And I know, again, there are some stories out there that have not been told. They have yet to be told. And you may be the voice for someone today. You may be the voice of someone who has already passed away. And you're saying, what can I do? How can I get involved? Well, let's check the justice system for one. Let's see what's going on and how did this happen? What fell through the cracks to make this, to leave someone walking on the streets? What is happening right now in our society that this is okay? Because it's not. It's not okay. And the more we speak out, the more we make it known that this is an issue in our world, then the more we show up and we show the enemy that he is defeated, right? Listen, I want to bless you with the book. It's called A Path to Hope, Restoring the Spirit of the Abused Christian Woman by Roadside. And I want to be able to bless someone with that. So what we'll do is, if you call us at 301-398-8001, let me make sure that is the right number, because I always get this number messed up. So let me make sure I got the right number. 301-839-8001. Again, that's 301-839-8009. I want you to call, and we're going to give this book to the 10th person, the fifth person that calls the studio today. We want, again, to be a blessing to you and give you a good read. Latiese, I'm in awe. I'm in awe that again, we are in a culture, in a world that will turn their heads to something that is so it's just so painful. It's just and time and time again I ask myself, am I being aware of what's going on around me? Because a lot of times we speak without speaking. We show it in our body language, and like you just said, to help someone today, if they're saying, I don't want to go home. Just something as simple as allowing them to stay the night. Something as simple as keeping the children when you see someone overwhelmed with children. Because abuse, sometimes when men or women are going through abusive situations, what they do is they can take it out on the children too, if they're not, if you're not careful with that. So I want to make sure that that today's show made our audience aware of what's going on, and it really challenges us to say, okay, I'm not going to walk around silent. I'm not going to walk around and ignore the issues that are at hand, because these are serious issues at hand. And until we stand up and we're bold and courageous in terms of addressing those issues, then we'll keep seeing situations like this. And I think that we all can attest to the fact that we don't want people walking on the street who can do harm to our children and to our families. So we got to make sure that we pay attention.
Yes.
We pay attention and we acknowledge what's going on.
Absolutely.
So tell me, Latiese, when you think about where you are today, and you sharing your story, what is it that you what feelings are you feeling right now, just in terms of, okay, this is my baby's story. This is more than my story. This is my baby's story, and I want to make sure that I get this out. What's going on right now?
The flesh in me is weak. I know that it's nothing but the strength of God who is getting me through from the beginning all the way up until now. I hear so many people say, oh, you're so strong. I admire your strength. It's not me. It's not me at all.
Yeah.
I thank God every day for the strength, for the wisdom, even for the peace. Because, like you say, people will always combat the truth. They say, oh, even whatever they have to say that is negative, it's blocked out. I don't hear it and I don't feel it because of the peace that God has given me. I just know that the truth has to be told.
Absolutely. It has to be told. And I'm so glad that you chose to come to Simply Shift with Kashonna to share the truth, because that's what makes us free. That's what sets us free. And there is no better way, than to share it with this platform, with this audience, and say, okay, this is what I want you to know. And I believe that even as the audience is sharing it with their friends and their family, that people are going to be more aware, and they're going to pay attention to what's going on around them and make some decisions to do some things differently. I know I'm going to make a decision personally to do some things differently and to really pay attention to people, because one of the things that I did a couple of years ago is, we're always saying, how you doing? And we kind of keep walking.
Right.
But we don't really want to know how people doing.
Right.
We're like, hey, how you doing? But we're walking right past them.
Exactly.
And I said, I really want to make an intentional effort to say, how are you? And look at people. Take a minute to look at people in their eyes and engage with them and find out how they're really doing. Because there are a lot of people who are hurting, who are just bruised by life.
Exactly.
And I'm talking about even beyond domestic violence. Some people are they're just tired, and if we take that time to really say, how are you doing, and is there anything that I can do? Because when you take that time to show that you care, you don't know whose heart you're touching. You don't know whose life you're changing. And so that's why it's important to just really say, next time you ask someone how they're doing, really look in their eyes and say, how are you? And then walk away knowing what you can do to help that person just kind of take a detour in their life, even if it's if it's something bad. So thank you. I mean, a million times over, thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being the voice for Carrington. Thank you so much for being bold enough and courageous enough to share with us what has happened in your life to make ours better. And again, if you are someone who is going through an abusive relationship, or someone who is, then make sure that we do what we need to do to tell somebody, to tell the right people, to get the word out. And if you're in a family situation like Latiese was, and people kind of just are ignoring the signs, I encourage you to go back to that person. I want you to kind of think about your family gatherings over the holidays. Was something weird? Was something off to you that you need to call someone today and say, hey, how are you doing? How are you really doing? Then do it, because you never know whose life you can save. All right. Latiese, you stirred us up today. You stirred us up in Facebook. We had to do this in 2 parts. It was so good that we we had to make sure we got you in 2 parts. But listen, if the book, we are giving away a free book today. And if you are wanting this book, call us today at 309-839-8009. Again, it's 301-839-8009. My name is Kashonna Holland, and you have joined Simply Shift with Kashonna to get your afternoon boost. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next Monday at noon.